welcome to the Love Government. I'm Dennis Leary. I'm the inventor of the Love Government. So you're very welcome. This is going to be the 10th episode in this series of videos of about 15 minutes in length on sex signs. Sex signs are part of the Love Government presentation for what we think is going to be helpful information for the world today. Sex signs are part of love. It's always governed by love. The whole idea is to be governed by love. That is implied in the name, the Love Government. But sex is where it's at. We need to uncover our original experiences of sexuality within a natural setting that is safe, protected, and healthy, if we want to help the planet and if we want to even survive. So the sexual aspect of this thing is very, very important. We've been talking about the love culture in terms of the lover, which is the main symbol and sign of all the lovers in the culture, and really all lovers across time and space are lovers. Love is the most powerful force in the world. Love makes the world go round. Love is really on everybody's mind. And below love is sex. Sex is the foundation of love. Love grows out of the sexual experience. In the love culture, and in general, we were born because of sexual activity. Now, why that is such a big problem for us, why we either repress it or we act it out in inappropriate, perverse ways, I don't know. I suspect it has to do with patriarchy, which is government ruled by men who rebelled against the love culture, rebelled against woman herself, and tried to set up their own structure, which is a phallic model. I think that's where the problem comes in, because without woman as the central focus of sex, sex becomes perverse. It becomes patriarchal. It becomes out of order. And so when men took over running the governments in this type of phallic pyramid scheme operation, sex got perverted because it's ripped out of its natural context, and then it becomes violent sex. So men began acquiring their power by killing the animals. That gives them a blood rush. That bulks them up. Even today, men's blood count is significantly higher than women's, despite the fact that women bleed. So men have been bulked up by the spilling of blood, by the eating of blood, and the killing of the animals. That's how they got their power. And it's a type of bloodlust, but that's all under the covers as far as public discourse goes now, and it's simply denied. So the people of the love culture had a different value system, a different way of looking at the feeling of things. They were grounded differently, and then they wished to pass this on to their children, so they did rites and ceremonies and stories like we do. But those stories are very different. In the love culture, they centered around the lover and what she did. Basically what she did was feed them, nurture them from her body, since everything was looked at as one lover's body that nurtured us and nourished us. So that's the way that people thought, and then their ceremonies followed suit. Now the main thing is sexuality. Always sexuality is at the base of everything, because that's how we got here. And so the sexual relations, the sexual activity, is the main thing that the people of that time focused on, and they celebrated in their ceremonies. In the beginning, nature is a very big word here, parthenogenic. Parthenogenesis means virgin birth. There isn't sexuality at all. That's a later development. Parthenogenesis means virgin, partheno. They get the Parthenon in Athens, for example, dedicated to Athena, because she was a virgin. She's the one that came out of Jupiter or Zeus's head. Athena was a virgin. She never got married apparently, and she came out was the virgin birth. It doesn't make any sense to be born out of the head, and the Bible is a similar thing. God speaks out of his mouth. A more natural way is that we're born out of the vagina. But, patriarchs have a problem with sex ever since they split from women and began killing animals and building up their own Tower of Babel power system, their pyramid system. They distrust. They lost contact with what's below the belt. And that's woman's territory in their mind, and that's dirty, evil, not to be trusted. So they get higher up in towards their head, and then they operate as disembodied heads, talking heads, which we have today. So we're attempting to get our feet on the ground, and we go on this sign downwards. And the ceremonies of the time were celebrating that type of thing. So they were sexual ceremonies. They celebrated, initially, the lover who just simply nourished the earth through her body. Whether, she could be talking like God does, talk out of his mouth. But mainly it comes out from between her legs because it's a lower center of gravity. It's closer to the earth. And women have a lower center of gravity than men. Men to bulk up their upper body through hunting, killing, and blood sports and all kinds of things. Heavy lifters, right? Macho men, Superman. But so the lovers celebrated initially. They celebrated this type of parthenogenic type of reproduction. Most of nature is parthenogenic. It doesn't require insemination. The bodies of the trillions of cells of our body don't require insemination. They just divide, where the mother cell makes a daughter cell. It's very simple. And the lower life forms are that way too. They're parthenogenic. A lot of them are. Even animal lower life doesn't require insemination. Insemination or sex is actually a later development that nature experimented with. Originally, the original story is that God made man, and then woman was taken from Adam's rib, right? So woman comes from man. Well, that's a rewrite of the original story. Man comes from woman, as any woman can attest. Man, her man-child comes out of her womb, her uterus. Man comes from woman. It's a natural thing. And so therefore woman is the primary focus, and man is an adjunct to that. Man helps woman. The Bible's got it reversed. Like patriarchy takes an original story and just twists it backwards, upside down, and now it makes Eve the helper of Adam. Adam was lonely, so God creates a woman to be his companion to help him cure his loneliness. That's a reversal of the original story. It was woman who was parthenogenic. She took care of herself. She gave herself pleasure. She masturbated, whatever. She gave birth without assistance of a man. So man is an add-on in nature's great, wide lens, wide angle view. Woman is parthenogenesis. Even in the Catholic Church, we have a virgin birth story. Mary, the mother of Jesus, gives birth without insemination of a man. It's called a virgin birth. It's parthenogenesis. It's a holdover from the parthenogenic model of reality. It's not even a model. It's a reality. Nature is primarily woman, and that's was in the culture, right? So Mary conceives by a spirit. God comes and inseminates her. God's Holy Spirit inseminates. Spirit is just another word for semen. Spirit and semen are closely linked. And the original creation story of God, you have the waters of creation, right? It's called the wohu abohu in Hebrew. Wohu abohu, the waters of creation. They're dark and they're mysterious, and they're like a nebula up in the stars somewhere. It's a wohu abohu. What is this? So God's Spirit appears, hovers over the water, and starts making things. That's a pseudonym for his semen. So in the case of then later on, in the case of Mary having Jesus, she has to, because patriarchs don't want to have Mary, the mother of God, having to do with sex. It's dirty down there, and So we have to have a Holy Spirit, which is another way of saying semen, come down and inseminate Mary through the Holy Spirit, which is unnatural, artificial, made-up story to twist the natural facts of the fact that the lover mother births through a natural process, through her legs, through her uterus. That's natural. It makes sense. But it's not interesting to patriarchs because it gives the woman the power, and they want the power. So they make up a different story with God doing it all. So it's a made up. We're all making up stories. But the question is, which story is true to life? Because it's going to be a matter of life or death, which story we follow, which path we go. It's a matter of life or death. And birth is a life story. And what is death? Well, that's another subject. Is death really what it seems, or is it another type of life? But that's off the track. So the love culture celebrated things in rituals and stories like we do, except the stories were more true to life. So parthenogenesis was the beginning. Then we get into sex, where nature experiments with having sex. So in the story, the woman has a man-child, the man-child grows up, and then you have men on the scene. And so then you have insemination by a man. And remember, this takes a while for women to figure this out as they're growing up, so to speak. They begin to put two and two together. 9 months, 9 moons. Man has something to do with it. They share the story with men. Men let it go to their head and think they're the big, just because they supply the seed. They forget all about that the egg is, thousands of times bigger than the seed, and the egg also is a seed, but all they see is the semen, the one little semen, and they think that's the whole story, and that's the way men tend to think if they're not grounded in their womanhood. So, getting back on track here into what the people were understanding about themselves, what they were doing. They were celebrating. No, they just didn't masturbate. The woman didn't masturbate and think that this is parthenogenic. Now it's sexual. The man is involved. So then they celebrate sexual rights where a man is involved. So men are invited into the women's circle and they reenact sexual ceremonies. So the men now have sex with the women. But and then it's acted out in their sacred circles, and these are done in shrines, very simple things, gathering circles, signs, and these are the things that show up in the Bible that God hated, because he said the women there and some of the men now are doing very nasty, dirty things, and I don't have a control over it. So therefore go in and wipe it out. Kill it all. Animals, everything that moves, kill it. Grapevines and all. No, save one grapevine for me, I like wine. Anyway, so God does this thing. So I don't want to be too heavy about this stuff, but it is really heavy-duty stuff. It's heavy Mac-duty stuff. But we can be light, because the love culture was not this way. We're heavy-hearted. We're heavy in our stuff. We're philosophical. In the love culture, the talk was bantering type, like butterflies, flying away. Oh, it was light-hearted. It was just part of nature. So sex was that way too. It was fun. It was joking. It was lighthearted. In the ceremonies, so they acted out separate ceremonies. So I'm just not going to go into detail about what they might have done, but you can imagine it. If you can imagine it, imagine it. And it was all clean, pure, fun, nature-based, and it was life-enhancing. It was pleasurable. Pleasure. Let me talk about pleasure here. Pleasure. You know what Eden means in Greek, I think? I read. Eden means pleasure. So I'm going to bring this 10th episode to a close here with that thought. Keep it in mind, because we're going to go and build on that idea. Eden means pleasure. Sex means pleasure. Love means pleasure. So signing off now. I hope you have a very loving, pleasurable day. Thank you.